providing advanced educations and training in STEM areas. And I think this field on gamifications in education is really can help us, no, and maybe help us to improve our way and of teaching and providing a better experiential learning for our students, especially in this pandemic situations that we have. We teachers are really cracking our head on how to make our online classes, you know that, sir, no, to be more engaging and fun for our students. So, sir, I really thank you for sharing your time with us, and in behalf of the college and our students and faculty members of CSTE, we thank you in advance, and I welcome everybody and hope we're going to learn and enjoy this webinar.
Thank you, Lila. That was such a great introduction, and thank you, Angelo. Angelo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Thank you, Dean Lila. I'd like to introduce our speaker. Our speaker for this webinar finished his Doctor of Philosophy in Zoology at the University of Oxford, United Kingdom. He also served as postdoctoral researcher and lecturer at the Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, University of Oxford. At present, he is a university lecturer at the Oxford Brookes University. He received multiple awards in his various capacities as researcher, educator, and scientist. He has published more than 20 research articles in high-impact journals. He also initiated several projects in designing habitat networks for the conservation of the Amazon, and designing an escape room for teaching conservation, and various projects on e-learning and game development in various conservation topics. He also organized several international courses on wildlife conservation, utilizing interactive gameplay, e-learning, and educational videos. At present, he has developed more than 10 educational games which are used to teach different conservation topics, and which I am very lucky and privileged to have tried and enjoyed it as a student in one of his international wildlife conservation courses. Our webinar speaker is Dr. Cedric Kai Wei Tan.
Thank you very much, Angelo. I recall Angelo being one of my students from the wildlife conservation course in 2019 when it was held in Philippines, and he was a fantastic student. It was Game of Thrones, and the students were put into kingdoms and they have to fight in military wars in order to win the different thrones. Anyway, that aside, thank you very much for welcoming me to this seminar. First up, I would like to share my screen, and so everyone should be able to see my presentation at this moment. All right, great. So this is a presentation on the educational games for STEM. I first started off creating games for just simply revision. So it was a snakes and ladders type of game whereby the students answer questions and they advance on the board. And the students really enjoyed themselves. They said that they really liked playing the game. They remembered the game, but they did not remember what the game was about, meaning the lesson that they had learned. That was interesting. So I went on subsequently to create games for learning rather than just memorization, but playing, and through the experience, they learn from it. So in this seminar, your voice counts. We would have questions and you will have a poll that appears that will ask you yes or no. So let's try this. I'll try this a little bit. I'm going to set up the poll at this moment. I'm okay. Oh, Angelo, are you able to do the polls for me on your main screen?
Yeah,
just
okay.
one. Yeah. All right, so let's have a poll of I love games. Do you like games? Yes or no? Angelo, please submit, create the poll and send it over.
Yes.
I just wanted to see, the poll is for everyone, so we should be able to see everyone's submission. Okay, I'm going to control the poll right now. Let's relaunch the poll. Okay, you should see a screen that appears in front of you, and I would like you to submit yes or no. I love games.
Okay, answers are coming now, Seth.
Thank you. I'm seeing all the answers. That's fantastic. We have 24 saying yes and 0 saying no. I guess that's why you are here during the seminar. Okay, great. Thank you very much. How about something a little bit different? What if I change this to I love educational games? Let's see what you have for your views on educational games. Ah, interesting. So we have out of 39 submissions, 29 have submitted. If you are unable to submit, that's fine. But I'll let you know 74% voted yes and the rest have not voted. So many of you do like educational games. That's contrary to what I had thought, because the word educational would mean that the game might be fun, but also trying to teach something, and that might defer people from trying to play it. When I first taught at Oxford using games, many of the lecturers, unfortunately, they were a little bit adverse to it. They say things like, are the students really learning? You're just giving them chocolates, or the games are not useful, they are just distracting. So these are comments from the other lecturers at Oxford, thinking that games are just childish ways of getting the students engaged. Let's see what we have, and hopefully at the end you would have some other view about educational games. So how can we use games for the STEM teaching? These are some of the games that I've created. The Conservation Genetics Casino, where the students bet on their answers and manage their casino chips of different colors. The different colors are representative of characteristics of that species. So for example, when the red species comes, it will wipe out the red chip. So the idea here is to keep the population as colorful as possible. Then we have the camera trapping game. The students deploy their camera traps, collect data on clouded leopards, and analyze them. And finally, a game on animal behavior, where the students are different species and they try to eat each other or avoid being eaten. So serious games, we might have heard of these terms before. Oh, someone is doing something on my whiteboard. Interesting. So the definition of serious games, games designed for a primary purpose other than pure entertainment. When you play games, we think of fun, not really learning. So this is my definition of serious games, games that are designed for a different purpose other than pure entertainment. Is this yes or no? I would like to hear from you. Let's hear from you. So the poll has been reactivated. Okay, let's give it a couple more seconds, maybe 5 more seconds. Submit your poll, please. What do you think? Are serious games games designed for a primary purpose other than pure entertainment? Okay, great. I'll just share my results so you can see what your peers have been voting. Majority, yes. Indeed, the answer is yes. Serious games are games designed for a primary purpose other than pure entertainment. So they could be educational, they could be motivational, like games in a workplace, organization, where you complete a task and you gain a badge. Those games help motivate the workers. Okay, thank you very much for submitting your poll. So there are two types of games in general. These are based on the relationship with the topic. The supplemental, as the name suggests, they supplement the teaching, but the relationship with the topic is but weak. So the topic and the game are not really linked. The relationship is not really linked. Just like the example that I've just mentioned, when the students answer a question, they move up on the ladder or they move up on the board, like snakes and ladders. So answering the question is on statistics, has nothing to do with the topic, has nothing to do with the game itself. The next one, the other type, as you can see, experiential, is one for which the topic and the game are tightly linked. So the students learn from playing. The playing experience in itself is important in teaching them about, let's say, forest management or management of casino population. Okay. So supplemental games have no meaningful interaction with the topic. This is good for teaching facts. So we want to memorize things or historical facts. And it's great for reproduction directed learning. So people who want to teach facts and want students to help to remember the facts. So an example of an online supplemental game is Valiant. You can find out more from this YouTube channel, or you can find just Google it. And what we have here is that the participants are tasked to solve puzzles in this game. The historical facts and information about the World War are available, but not necessarily part of the game. So you don't really learn about the World War. You are, the game in itself, you play the puzzles, you try to solve them. Like for example, these are screenshots from the game. Here, the puzzle is cutting the barbed wire. And in order to solve this, they have to find the scissors in order to cut the barbed wire. This has nothing to do with the World War, and you don't really learn about the different players in the World War. Experiential games, on the other hand, the players learn about the topic while doing other related tasks. And it's good for teaching the complex cause and effect systems like the history of science or economics and even conservation. So when the students do something, they see the consequences of their action. The example that I've given earlier, the conservation genetics casino, tasks the students to actually manage the population of casino chips. There are 5 colors and they have to have as many as possible and as colorful as possible in order for the population not to become extinct. So the players are to maintain a heterogeneous, meaning colorful population of chips by betting on their answers. And depending on how confident they are on their answers, they will put more or less chips. Here we have another game. Let's see if we have assimilated the knowledge. This is the wildlife conservation game, the global carnivore conservation, and I'm particularly proud of this because we have manufactured the hard copy of it. This is the map, and you go across the entire world and to save the large carnivores. And this is interesting because it incorporated my research as well. These are 6 large carnivores and they are all part of Wild Cruise research. The Malaysian one is the Clouded Leopard one, and these are the places that I visited. And we have characters in the game. This is my manager or the director of Wild Crew, David McDonald, and I made myself a character as well, as you can see here. The postdoctoral researcher. Each of the character in the game have their special abilities, and you are able to use the special abilities to achieve your aim. So in this game, we go to the different research site, and interestingly, we incorporate research facts into the game itself using the cards. So the cards are questions based on the research that we do, the stories that we have in the field. So it's really immersive, and the students and the participants learn about what it is like to be the conservationist. So my question here for you, this is a supplemental game. Let's hear your views on this. Is this yes or no? Let's see what you have for your polls. This is a supplemental game. Okay, 5 more seconds to submit your views. It's getting really interesting. Many of you have more views now. Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Let's share the results and see what we've got. A lot of you are yes men. I can see that. Okay, so we have 76% saying yes and 24% saying no. The answer here is no. This is not a supplemental game, because through the process of playing, you learn to immerse in the world of conservation. Okay, you learn the stories, you learn the research, and the experience of playing the game itself is a learning journey. So this is an experiential game. This is not supplemental. So that meaning the game itself has a strong relationship with the subject that is being taught. But thank you very much for your views. We will see our next question, but that was a good attempt. So the two types of games in general that are supplemental and experiential. We have one example of each. They differ broadly in the audience type. So the type of audience, like is it kids, for adults, or is it the level of complexity? So experiential games, we can see that it's much more complex. It involves cause and effect, thinking about the consequences of your actions and the level of knowledge. So here we teach maybe more simple knowledge, and here we teach more of the application or understanding type of knowledge. So supplemental games is more for reproduction, memorization. So my question here is that experiential games are suitable for kids and supplemental games are suitable for adults. Is this yes or no? Let's hear your views on this. 5 more seconds, submit your vote. It's good to hear what you think so that I can explain things a little bit clearer if we are not quite sure. Okay, many of you are not sure at this moment or drawn to get some coffee. Thank you very much. Great. So let's share the results here. Here we have 18 people submitting no and 11 people saying yes. So the answer is actually no. Well done for the majority. The experiential games, because it's more complicated, it teaches application, understanding, it requires the participants to think about their actions. This experiential games is more suitable for adults. And supplemental, like snakes and ladders, asking students to answer questions and getting forward on the board, is more suitable for kids. Okay, well done. So what are the steps in creating educational games? This might be something that excites you. You want to create your own educational games. I use one overall guiding principle, that is a theory that is used in psychology, the self-determination theory. At first glance, it looks very complicated, but let's go through this with simple words. At one end, we have people who are not motivated. I'm sure some of you have experienced students that do not want to come to class, or just come to class and then falling asleep on the desk while you're talking. And on the other hand, we have students that are intrinsically motivated, very passionate, very willing to learn, very interested in the subject. In between, there's a spectrum, the extrinsically motivated students or people, okay? And all these words tend to be a little bit more complicated, but let's simplify them. So extrinsic motivation has a spectrum of 4 categories. The one nearest the A motivated is the rewards and punishment. So some of us think, oh, my parents will punish me if I do not pass a test. Wow, that's something that is extrinsically motivated. Or if I score 100%, I will get a top prize in the university. That's a reward system. Then more internally, along the right side, we have the self-esteem and pride, for which it is about the reputation that you have in society. Sometimes it is about how you look in front of society, how much your friends and family view you. And we have personal goals, one for which if your idea here, if your personal goal here is to be the world's famous conservation biologist, whatever you do right now, the studies that you have right now, you are motivated to study hard because you know that that would be useful in helping you become a world famous conservation biologist. And more internally, which is part of you, the personal beliefs. This could come from religion, your culture, okay, or your upbringing. So personal beliefs is something that is a little bit more internal and also a little bit more difficult to change. So using this principle, we have also elements, 6 elements of self-determination theory that would be useful when creating games. On one spectrum, the intrinsically motivated, the ones that are passionate, interested, loving what they do, how do we make them do that? Well, there's novelty, challenge, and aesthetics. Something that is new, something that is challenging, something that is beautiful, aesthetically inclined, is one that will intrinsically motivate the person. Think in terms of games. If the game is too easy, then you won't be motivated. You will lose interest easily. If the game is not new, there's no new stories, etc., or if the game looks a bit not very appealing, okay? Or we can think in terms of pursuing a partner. If you see someone that is new, someone that doesn't give in easily, and someone who is beautiful and all handsome, then you are more intrinsically motivated to pursue that person as a partner. Then we have internalization factors. There are 3 of them. These are also important: the relatedness, the competence, and autonomy. Why these 6 elements? Well, these 6 elements are important for me to formulate my games. I must think of, is the story new? Is the game new? Is the game challenging? Is the game colorful and appealing? And for relatedness, competence, and autonomy, we will move into more details right now. So relatedness. Relatedness, how we can incorporate this into a game. So we can group the class into teams. My classes consist of maybe 8 persons to 40 to 50 people, and I love them to work in pairs or triplets. And two-way interaction between students and tutor, very often than not, education might be one directional, but I would love to hear from you, like what I've done in this seminar. The interaction between students and tutor are also important. When they ask questions, they answer questions, you give them feedback. Okay, so these are two ways of improving relatedness into the game. Is this yes or no? Let's hear from you on this particular view. Let's relaunch the poll. I would like to hear from you. Relatedness. Yes or no? These are two ways of incorporating relatedness into games. Okay, submit your poll. We have 5 more seconds. Everything here is really quick and fast. Okay, 29 candidates and 29 participation. Let's hear, let's share the poll here. Okay, a majority yes, indeed, these are great ways of incorporating relatedness into games, having interactions during class. Relatedness can also come in the form of relatability with the subject. So having the students role play, for example, animals or the stakeholders in conservation like the government, so that they can relate and step into the shoes of others. Let's look at competence, which is slightly different. Competence, how do we increase competence? Before that, competence is about the mastery or the learning of the skill. So how good we are at particular skills. And to incorporate competence into games, we have the students doing different actions. So there are different ways of winning the game, and the students are in control of their actions. They are in control of what they can do rather than you giving them a dice. If you give them a dice, the dice dictates how many steps they can move, so they can control. So question here, is this true or false? Let's hear your views on this. Incorporating different actions and having students in control helps improve competence in the game. Okay, thank you very much. Fantastic. Let's share our results. Again, many of you are yes men. We have majority yes. Having different actions, having students in control is somewhat more of autonomy. Okay, so autonomy is one for which is freedom, it's free will, and the students are the ones that are the center of the learning process. So you give them many range of actions to take. Their students take actions and they see the consequences of their actions. This is more of autonomy. Competence is slightly different. It is the mastery or the learning of a particular skill. And in order to incorporate that into the game, we have questions that are increasingly difficult. You might first start off on a fact-based question, then a question of understanding, like rephrase the meaning of this word, and then an application type of question, or compare and contrast type of question. The questions become more and more difficult and make the students think. The tutors constantly check on answers and will explain or elaborate more when the answers are not very accurate, and the game become more and more challenging. This is like when the students are nearing the end and you become more and more difficult, it becomes more and more difficult for them, increasing the number of disasters and taking away their chips even more, or giving a volcanic eruption and reducing what they have. This makes the students more and more engaged. This is competence, the mastery of the skills. They get better, but you also make it more challenging. Okay, so we have went into 6 different elements: the novelty, the challenge, the aesthetics, which are so important in making the students want to play the game and enjoy the lesson. And we have competence, relatedness, and autonomy. And I want you to think of more ways of how you incorporate these into your games, because these are important in making the student intrinsically motivated to play your game. From my experience, I would love to share some tips on how you can make the game even more fun. First up, require participants to take actions to succeed. So this is related or similar to the idea of students are in control. Okay, not a dice mechanism, not a type of question where it's true or false, and if you answer it incorrectly, you can't do anything. Sometimes when they are answering it incorrectly, you can give them something to do, but it's more limited number of actions. So different ways of succeeding, taking actions, are part of autonomy and having the students control the game itself. Another one is the game should reflect real life scenario. This is usually the first step. When you create a game, you want to think, oh, what in the real life scenario, what would it be like? And use that as a platform for creating a game. The conservation genetics casino, the 5 colors, they represent different traits. So this is a population genetics game, and it reflects real life scenario. They have to have colorful chips in order to survive as a species. Here is another game. The students deploy their camera traps in a makeshift forest and collect the data. And depending on how well they deploy their cameras, how well they design the deployment, it affects the reliability of the data. And this is reflective of real life scenarios. Role play is another one that we should incorporate into our games. When kids, they take on the perspective of different animals, they can see things from their perspective, but also when it comes to complicated issues like conservation, you ask the students, the participants, to take on roles such as the local villager, the urban population, and they are able to step into the shoes of these people and understand why they might not support conservation. And finally, storytelling. We all love stories. Yes, when we watch a movie, when your grandma tells you a story, those stories are amazing because they often have this challenge or a climax for which the actors have to solve. And in this climax, the climax are usually incorporated into games in order to get the students a little bit more excited. This is an extra challenge that they have to overcome. So these are my tips from my many years of experience in gamification, and I hope that you can incorporate these into your game creation. We love to play games, we create games, but how do we know they work? How do we evaluate the games? This is interesting. We want to know if they work in terms of helping the students learn, but also helping motivating the students to learn more after the lesson. So let's look a little bit more into this subject, because I do have research on this and I would like to share. So serious games, this is behavior ecology game that I've created. Cash commons conservation is another game where students take on the different roles, the conservation biologists, the urban population, the rural population, and they try to manage a forest. Sometimes it results in the whole forest being destroyed and the city being built by the urban population. Even though you are a conservation biologist, in order to win the game as an urban population, you have to build a city and destroy the forest. So in this game, the participants are kind of in conflict with one another. And we have another game, the camera trapping game, which I have shared just now. So these games have reached more than 800 students over in the past 5 to 6 years. Ooh. And these are some of my students. We have taught games using online methods as well, whereby I call from Oxford and my teaching assistant is there to assist with the gameplay. So the question here is, do games enhance learning and increase the interest in ecology? Let's look at some of the research that we did. My study subjects were the students in the diploma at Wild Crew. These are 8 different students from different countries every year, and they are involved in learning wildlife conservation for 8 months. And the wildlife conservation course, mostly held in Malaysia, but last year in Rwanda and in Philippines, where Angelo was a participant, and we have engaged over 200 students for these courses. So the game types are divided into 2, as we have seen earlier. The supplemental games, this is a population viability analysis. So this game, to answer a question, it's like arcade. They shoot the bullets into one of these holes. And in this game, R Panther R, the students answer questions on statistics and move up the board. Then we have the experiential games that I've for example, the cash commons conservation, behavior ecology, and camera trapping. My question here is that, have I categorized these games accurately? Let's hear your views on this. The left side is supplemental, the right side is experiential. So give a vote. Is this yes or no? Okay, 5 more seconds, submit your vote, please. Some of you are just listening in, but it'll be great to hear your views. Oh, it's interesting. It's almost even. It's like elections, in the UK, in the US, whereby it's so close to one another, but you just need your little vote. So everyone vote, please, in order to change this whole, no, it's not a whole political thing, but just the presentation. So I'm going to end the vote now. Thank you very much. Let's share the votes. Oh, this is quite even, huh? The balance in itself, but a tip in the direction of yes. So indeed, I have classified the games accurately. The left side, the game, the arcade is not related to the subject. The board in itself is not related to statistics on the bottom left. But on the right, when they play the game, they step into the shoes of the different stakeholders. They become different species in behavior ecology. They learn about how to best deploy their camera traps in the camera trapping game. So the right side is experiential game because they learn from the experience of playing. And the left side, the game has no relationship with the topic that is being taught. Thank you very much. So we design an experiment whereby for each lesson or topic, we have 2 sessions, maybe the basics in session A and the more advanced in session B. And the students were divided into 2 groups. First, session A, where there's no game, and then we switch over in session B for the advanced topic with a game incorporated. And the other half of the students will have the game in first session and the no game in session B. The games are supplemental or experiential. Let's look at the results of this. So in terms of perception, we have an increment here. So they rated their interest and enjoyment, which is intrinsic motivation of the different modes of learning. So there's no game, which is the least. Then we have supplemental, which is intermediate with that of the no game and experiential. Then we have motivation to learn more after the lesson. Here in itself, the no game, people are not that motivated, but in games, they are motivated to learn more. And in application of the knowledge, they want to see how it's best applied. Oh, the slides are moving by itself, interestingly. Okay, someone might be controlling my monitor. Application of the knowledge. In this, the experiential games do very well in helping the students apply their knowledge. This is what the students perceive. It's not really about how much they learn, it's just how they think about the different lessons. Okay, great. So the games also help increase bonds between students. We see here in no game, they rated the increased bondedness as this, and in experiential game, they feel like they are bonded better with students. This is not really surprising, given that there is increased interactions in games. In supplemental games, is intermediate. It may be that supplemental games, sometimes it might be a bit more distracting and they don't really see the purpose of the game itself. So maybe they might not contribute as much. We don't know the answer to this question yet. So in terms of behavior, we recorded behaviors during the classes and we see the rate of behavior, rate of asking questions per hour per student is similar across the 3 lesson types. We see joyful behavior such as laughing, cheering. In experiential games, they are more likely to have joyful behavior, laughing, smiling, cheering, which is great. And distracted behavior such as yawning, sleeping, using the phone. I love it when students use the phone in classes. It is part of my data, so I don't stop them. So in experiential games, they seem to be more focused on the lesson itself, given that they are lowered. That's lowered the rate of distracted behavior. Okay, great. So in terms of learning, in my research, students learn better with experiential game. So this is a question for you. I want you to tell me whether this might be true or not. Oh. Students learn better with experiential games. What do you think? Okay, 33 have voted. Let's end the poll. Okay, and share your results. One of you said no, the rest said yes. Let's look at the results. I quantified learning using quizzes, not just perception. And we have here the results. So here is the proportion correct in quizzes before the lesson and after the lesson. You can see for no games, that's the purple one, before and after, okay, they increased from 35% to 60%. And for experiential games, it's very similar. So they did not learn better in experiential games, it's just very similar. For supplemental games, from before to after, the supplemental games, they did not learn that well, okay? It's partly maybe because it's distracting, the game itself, okay? Or it's more competitive. Nevertheless, there's no difference based on statistics in learning. So well done to this person who has said no, okay? Instead, contrary to what the students think in terms of their learning, the learning data based on quizzes show there is no difference in learning amongst the lesson type. So in summary, how do we evaluate? Using Kirkpatrick's models of evaluation, there are 4 of them, the reaction, so how the students react or what they perceive the game to be, how much they have learned, how well they have behaved, and the impact on their organization, the impact on themselves for the future, the impact on their own jobs. So my question here is, for all these 4, okay, I have used all these 4 in my own evaluation in my research. So this is a poll for you. Yes or no? I've used all these 4 as part of my research. I'll take 5 more seconds. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we have majority yes. The answer is actually no. I've only quantified 3 of them. Reaction using the perception poll, learning using quizzes, and behavior during classes. The last one, you need to follow the students after the course, looking at whether they have done anything with their own lives and jobs and organization. And I haven't shown you any results of this because I have not quantified or looked at the post-course effects of the games. Another summary point is that games can make ecology more interesting, they are more motivated to learn, and can increase bonding. So the games in itself is beneficial to learning. So hopefully I have given you some tools for evaluating your own education, but especially the ones with games in them. Another way of incorporating evaluation into your own work is making it part of the process. This is a theater-based science communication. It has some gamification elements, but it's not technically a game, where we are actors performing my research on clouded leopards. So this is an interactive play. We perform it at Kent and Bristol, which are cities in the UK, with 23 performances engaging with over 300 audiences. And in this picture, you can see that the audience are voting A or B, raising their cards up, just like what we're doing with the polls, A or B, okay? They are making decisions for the actors, whether to, let's see what the different decisions are. This is like choose your own adventure. You might as a kid, have been reading choose your own adventure style books, whereby you read a book and they ask you to make a decision and you flip to different pages to see the consequences. In this theater, is similar. We first start off with wood harvesting, and the audience can vote to stop harvesting or continue harvesting. And if they stop harvesting, the local person loses their job, becomes poor. So he might choose to stay in the forest or leave the forest. If you continue harvesting, unfortunately, the trees get smaller and you can continue again or convert part of it to oil palm. I won't go through the different decisions here, but you can see there are 5 different endings. One ending with illegal wildlife trade, another one with local being arrested, Another one whereby the forest is removed and the development starts. Ecotourism, whereby the people remain poor, but animals have their forest. And when we convert to oil palm, the forest is burnt. So there are 5 different endings here. So a question for you. Our main objective here for the theatre is to engage the is to engage the public rather than to conduct research on its impact. What do you think? Our main objective for this theatre was to engage the public rather than conduct research on its impact. Let's hear from you. Lovely. Thank you very much for the 27 of you that have voted. I'm going to share the results. Okay, so tipping over to the yes side, the answer here is actually this. Well, it's a very personal question. So what motivated me in the first instance to do this was actually to conduct research on the impact of theatre rather to engage the public. Very often than not, when we say public engagement, we do not know the impacts of it. And I was wondering what the research, I was wondering the impacts of my own public engagement and use the research as such to look at it. So question here, is the theatre path correlated with attitudes? And we have different theatre paths as we shown here. And some audience saw the ones with pet trade and others saw the one with oil palm plantation. So some audience were exposed only to oil palm plantation and others is just pet trade. So we asked at the end the audience to vote for how likely would you keep a clouded leopard as a pet. And we have very unlikely to very likely. Some kids really love this small little animal. And we asked the question on how likely would you purchase products using palm oil in the future. So this is a range as well, okay? And here we show that theatre path does not correlate with the likelihood of keeping clouded leopard as a pet. So if you are exposed to the pet ending or the non-pet ending, there's no difference in whether you are likely to keep the clouded leopard as a pet. Similarly, for kids, there's no difference whether you are exposed to this pet ending or non-pet ending. Okay. And the second results, the theatre path with oil palm products, we see here that adults are less likely to use oil palm products when they are exposed to the oil palm ending. For kids, it didn't matter, but if they saw the burnt forest, the adults are less likely to use oil palm products, showing that this theatre did indeed have an impact on the adults, but not the kids. So I do additional work outside escape room as well, where this is the science festival last year, where we conducted an escape room in which the students, first the participants go to a supermarket and buy their products, and whatever products that they have here, plastics or palm oil, it affects the second room, which is about saving a researcher from a burnt forest. And I also delve in e-learning, as Angelo have explained, and I'm using games as part of the teaching. And this is a virtual reality talk that you can find post seminar. Okay, have a look at it. It's on YouTube. You can see me giving a talk. You can move around. Poachers come from neighboring countries like Myanmar and Vietnam, and they come here to hunt the animals, not only to eat, so to sell the fur for illegal wildlife trade. Okay, so just a glimpse of it, and thank you very much. That's all for my talk. Okay, and I welcome questions.
Thank you very much, Said. There are questions that were sent to me privately, so I'll ask this on their behalf. The first one is, in developing educational games, how long does it usually take?
So previously, it took me 5 times the amount of time to teach. Let's say for 1 hour of lecture, it would take 5 hours to develop the entire lecture plus games. But now I've become more proficient in it and know it takes a lot of planning. With the planning, it reduces the amount of time. So I take about 3 hours, including planning, to create an additional educational game that is meant for a lecture for 1 hour. So it's about 3 to 5 times the amount of time that you use in teaching.
Okay, thank you, Said. Another question. I have read an article about game-based learning. I want to know how is this different from gamification?
So these two terms sometimes are used interchangeably. That's a very good question. Game-based learning is actually what you have seen in my presentation. You learn using games. Gamification is the process of putting games in something. It's just a process of putting games. It can be used to refer to gamification of the work environment. So it's not using games to learn, but the motivating the organization people to work harder. That's gamification. That's a process itself. So that's a good question. The game-based learning is what you have seen in this presentation. I use gamification, or I gamified the lesson itself.
Another one is, uh, serve the shot and
The internet is a little bit choppy.
Sorry, I'll repeat.
Yep.
How do you measure or observe the reaction and behavior of your students?
Very good question. So I did have research assistants that recorded specific behaviors during classes. They are facing the students, and with the consent of the participants, I also have video recordings in order to verify the behaviors. We are mostly interested in distracted behavior like using the phone or sleeping in class, to behaviors like asking questions and answering questions. So we use such techniques to record the behavior. And the reaction is using perception or feedback or questionnaires that we administer to the participants at the end of the course.
Thank you, Said. Another one. What is the suggested lesson to game time ratio? What is the suggested lesson to game time ratio?
Good question. So I don't see games and lessons as separate. In my lesson, the students are given a story or a scenario, and the lesson will teach them something and then ask a question based on what they have been taught. So I wouldn't have a percentage, but if I had to give a percentage, it would be 50-50. You teach them something, you want to understand whether they have understood, so you ask questions and they play as part of the process. So it is all part of the holistic learning. I would say a 50-50.
Okay, last two questions, Said. Is there a rule of thumb for topics to be covered? And if it is in a form of board game, would Bloom's taxonomy still be used for the type of questions, like the snake and ladder type?
Fantastic. Great. So the first one, sorry, remind me the first question.
Is there a rule of thumb for topics to be covered? Like what?
There's no rule of thumb for topics. I've seen many of the participants create games on chemistry, on physics, on social sciences. The
Hey, okay,
idea,
the work positive.
the idea here is to see the real life scenario and use that to create the game. There's no topic that you can't create a game with. That's what I believe in. So think of the real life scenario and then use that to create the game. The second one, Bloom's taxonomy. Many of you are familiar, but just Bloom's taxonomy is a spectrum of different order thinking skills. The most basic is memorization. Then we have understanding, application, but the higher order thinking skills are one for which you compare and contrast, or you create new ideas. So this is a triangle. And indeed, your questions can become more and more challenging along the lessons as you ask them what is, and then you go on to understanding like how and why, and then you go on to synthesis, which is compare and contrast, or apply this knowledge to this scenario. And at the end, you can ask them questions such as create an experiment, or ask them a question on evaluate this experiment, so criticize the experiment. So your question can become more and more challenging as such, going down the spectrum or going up the spectrum of Bloom's taxonomy to the higher order thinking skills.
Final question said.
Yep.
How do you incorporate games in this new normal teaching where teachers cannot or have minimal interaction with students in the classroom?
Very good. Great question. So what I've done here is very simple polling action because it's a big class and I just wanted to hear you. As part of the game, you can also ask the participants to actually monitor their scores, and at the end, those who have the highest scores get a prize from you. That's a simple supplemental game. For the more complicated ones, sometimes I ask the students to poll in using their phones, or I think probably best to use the poll function in Zoom. So we have the breakout rooms. So you get the students into smaller groups. You can ask them to discuss and propose something. And at the end, when they share their proposals in a big group, after all the small groups have discussed, then you can award the best group using peer voting. They voted for the best group, they award the best group some form or prize. It doesn't have to be a complicated game. It could be one for which the students are just given the scenario, given roles, or given a challenge, and they have to propose an idea at the end, and you award the best idea with some extrinsic reward, such as Amazon voucher, which you can give easily online. So with the new norm, it's not difficult. I would say there are many ways to doing it. You don't have to play online games. Just think of real life scenarios, role play, storytelling, and this in itself is gamification of the learning process.
Thank you, Sed. There's one more sent through the chat. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to collaborate with you, sir? Like we want to use one of your games in our classes, then do research together and see if it is really effective for Filipinos.
Certainly. So if you want to collaborate, drop me an email. I'm still looking at data from the past courses, and if you want to test out my games, I have lesson plans ready on how to create the game over in your country, the board games, and then you test it out and we can talk about the data. So this is, oh, I've typed it into the private chat. I'm just going to everyone in the meeting. This is my new email. I've joined Brookes recently. I still teach for Oxford part-time, but this is my new email. And if you have further questions or you wish to establish a collaboration, we can discuss over email.
Thank you very much, Sed. For that, we are very thankful for giving your time and expertise on this matter. We'd like to present you this Certificate of Appreciation from the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in grateful recognition for your valuable contribution as a resource speaker in the webinar on creating and evaluating educational games for STEM held on September 15, 2020. Given this 15th day of September, at the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines, signed by our Dean, Dr. Laila S.
Amazing.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. No bunch of
Thank you very
flowers.
much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
will email. Yeah. Thank you very much. Said. I will
Most
email
welcome.
this to you. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
thank
we
you
have
everyone for coming and submitting your polls. It's lovely to hear what you think.
and we have a group picture, Said, a class picture.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And let me get rid of my antennae hair.
Okay. Maybe we can request everyone, for those who are confident, to turn on their cameras
Yeah.
for
Or
the
everyone's
class
starting
picture.
pictures of their hair and their makeup. Faster,
Okay, let's have one page one first. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3, smile.
There are multiple
Then,
screens.
yeah. And last. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sad.
Most welcome and great to see all of you and have a lovely week ahead.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sir Tan and
Thank you,
host,
sir.
Sir
Thank you.
Cello and Ma'am Fajardo. Thank you.